Your performance window is about 60 to 90 seconds. That's how long it takes for one run of ski racing. And if your blood sugar is not perfect when you kick out of the start gate, there's not much you can do about it, right? Like your muscles fire slower. There's all of these kind of side effects of having blood sugar that's out of range for that high performance and small window of a sport. So that was really, really frustrating. And it was definitely a huge learning curve for me to figure out what was working and what wasn't to try and prepare for that really small time frame. It was definitely hard and my muscles felt more fatigued, but it was also an experience I had where like my senses came back to life after I was put on insulin. I imagine that I was actually undiagnosed diabetic for several months before. Even in the hospital, I remember people hugging me and just being like, holy crap, my nerves. Like I could feel things more. Like I hadn't realized that I had lost like sensation touch, like all of these super sensitive things had just kind of become more dull. And when I was put back on insulin therapy and my body kind of started coming back to itself and regaining muscle and regaining its senses, it was like I was alive again. It was pretty cool to experience that way. Silver linings, right?
Today's guest is someone who has navigated the high-stakes world of alpine ski racing while facing a life-changing diagnosis at the height of her career. Maia Bickert grew up in South Lake Tahoe and was on skis before she could walk. She climbed the ranks to compete in the Junior Olympics and US Nationals, but at age 18, her path took an unexpected turn when she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Instead of letting it stop her, she leaned into the science, studying immunology to master her own health. Today, she's a backcountry skier, a business owner, and a mentor for the next generation of T1D athletes. I haven't skied myself in over 15 years, but I'm planning a family ski trip in a few weeks, so I hope Maia will be able to tell me everything I need to know about diabetes and snow sports. Maia, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
How's your day been so far?
I actually had a funny mishap. I was taking out the trash this morning and slipped and fell and smacked my head and got a little
ouch
band-aid on my finger. So that was a rough start to the day, but things are looking up now. So
I hope nothing serious happened. Like you're not injured or anything.
No, all good.
And is your glucose doing okay too?
I definitely saw a spike right after that little crash because I definitely smacked my finger pretty good and scraped it up. So, nothing like a good adrenaline to get your blood sugar spiking in the morning.
Yeah, indeed. So many things can impact your blood sugar. So Maia, let's dive into the early days first. I said before that you could ski before you could walk. So you're basically born on skis. When was the first time you ever skied?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't remember. People always ask me things like this, and I don't remember learning because as soon as I could walk, my parents put about 4 pairs of socks on my feet so they could fit into the smallest size ski boots that exist, and sent me flying down a hill. So I was about 20 months old when I learned how to ski. And that was thanks to my parents. They're both huge outdoor athletes and advocates. And at the time, my mom was a ski instructor, so she got me started super young. My brother also started pretty young. He's a little bit older than me. And so I just wanted to chase in his footsteps. And so it was just before I was 2 years old, I learned to ski and then skied quite often with my family. My mom would bribe me with chocolates, the little Dove chocolates in the foil. And it would be, okay, Maia, you can have another piece of chocolate if you take another run with me. And so I would ski until she ran out of chocolate. And that was kind of the birth of my love for skiing. So
yeah, so it's a real skiing family you had then.
Yeah, definitely. My mom grew up in the Sacramento area, and she would go up on the weekends up to Tahoe and do a lot of skiing on her own. And then my dad moved out here from the East Coast in his 20s, and he taught himself to ski as well. So they kind of found each other later on in life, and not only skiing, but they love backpacking and mountain biking and all sorts of fun outdoor things that Lake Tahoe is a great playground for. So.
Yeah. So you were a competitive ski racer from a very young age too. So what did your life look like before diabetes was even on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, so I started racing when I was 6 years old, fell in love with it, and then kind of went on to take it pretty seriously as I got older. I would dedicate more and more time to it. I think by the time I was 14, I was traveling and competing internationally. And I was skiing and training 5 days a week. So I had this really cool program at our high school and our middle school called Ski PE. So I would have PE scheduled as my last class of the day. So instead of going to PE, I would go up to the ski hill and I'd go train in gates or do some ski training. And my ski coaches would sign off that I did my physical activity for the day. So I wouldn't
Cool.
have to do like the traditional physical education that the United States curriculum requires in school. And I kind of swapped that out for skiing. So, yeah, I would ski Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoons, and then Saturday, Sunday, every day, pretty much every day since I was 8 years old, or every weekend since I was 8 years old, I dedicated to ski training. So I've got a lot of
Wow.
hours into it. Yeah, and then went on to compete, like I was saying, when I was 14, probably internationally. And then I started dedicating my summers to it. So I would go to places like Mount Hood, Oregon, where there's a glacier and they have snow year round, or we went to New Zealand, we went to Chile. So Southern Hemisphere stuff so that we could train for skiing in the summertime when there's no snow in Tahoe.
So skiing was really your life.
It was, yeah. And I'm super thankful for it. I got to see the world. I had to work really hard for it. I had to apply for a lot of scholarships so we could afford it. But I worked hard, earned the scholarships, was able to travel on that, and eventually made it to the point of traveling with the Western region team. So there's like kind of some development pipelines that build you up towards getting onto the US ski team. And so I was traveling with the Western region team and we would do regional camps, and then went on to compete. Yeah, like you had mentioned, in Junior Olympics, NORAMs, nationals, kind of that level right below World Cup. So made it pretty far, and had a lot of fun. And I wouldn't change it for the world, but I am thankful that, diabetes kind of shifted my path enough, and I love my life and where I'm at today. Yeah, diabetes was a big eye-opening event in my life, and it kind of caused that next shift.
Yeah, from what you're saying, it looked like you had a ski racing career in front of you, but then you were diagnosed at age 18, right? In the middle of a North American Cup circuit in Canada. Maybe can you take us back to that moment? When did you first notice something was not right?
Yeah, it was, I was 18 years old and I was traveling up to Panorama, Canada for a ski race. It was a NORAM event, so that is just the level below World Cup. And I was traveling up there, and I remember telling my coach along the way, we were driving up to the ski resort, and I was like, just so you know, like I'm having some weird symptoms. I'm not really sure what's going on, but like I'm peeing a ton, and I'm super thirsty, and I don't feel like food is like giving me energy like it normally does. And I remember saying that before I knew anything about, my diagnosis or what diabetes actually is. And she's like, okay, well, thanks for telling me. And so I went through the ski race. I wasn't able to finish the ski race. I was so weak. My muscles, it's just like nothing works when your blood sugar's that high. And so it was, right before I'm diagnosed. So I'm not producing any more insulin really. And my blood sugar was climbing, climbing, climbing for probably weeks leading up to that ski race. And I had lost 20 pounds, didn't really realize it, because a lot of it was just muscle mass. I was a very lean kid because I was ski racing for so long and very physically fit. So I hadn't noticed that I had lost a ton of weight because it wasn't super visual. It was more in my muscle mass that I had lost. So yeah, did not finish either of the ski races that I was up in Canada for, was just exhausted. I remember passing out in the middle of the day, taking naps, and like that wasn't totally like me at the time. And the other thing I remember is I had one of those like extra tall Nalgene water bottles, and I was just slamming water as much as I could, classic symptoms of an undiagnosed type 1 diabetic. So, I went home after that ski race and it was Christmas time. And so I spent Christmas with my family. And the day after Christmas, we were going to go out and go backcountry skiing together. And I just didn't feel well enough. So I was like, okay, I have a UTI because I'm peeing so much. I'm self-diagnosing myself, of course, just the little on to the next issue, right, in my mind. So I went into urgent care. I'm like, hey, doc, here's the situation. I have a UTI. I'm peeing too much. I can't empty my bladder. Can you get me antibiotics? I got life to get back to. And so the doc tested my urine and said there's no sign of infection, but you have the highest possible glucose level you could register. You're developing diabetes, and I've called an ambulance to take you to the emergency room. My blood sugar was 564 milligrams per deciliter, so definitely pretty out of range. And I spent the next couple days in the emergency room, kind of coming in and out of consciousness. I think I was on the brink of DKA. I was never officially diagnosed. I did have ketones, but I was never officially diagnosed as in ketoacidosis. And so I remember like falling asleep and having the little heart monitor stickers on my chest and then waking back up and they'd be gone. And it was just like kind of just this in and out of like really, really fighting my body. And so that was scary. And and then you go through the immediate learning curve of diabetes, which is so wild, right? Like you're taught all of a sudden that, the carbohydrates that you eat have to be counteracted by insulin, and this is how you administer insulin. And 2 days later, here I am giving myself my own shots for the first time and staring at needles in the face, like it's not part of a normal life generally, and it's not something that a lot of people would ever expect to have to go through. So steep learning curve, was sent on my way with medications, and kind of figured it out from there.
Yeah, and well, you figured it out from there, but you figured it out pretty quickly, right? Because how long did it take after your diagnosis before you were back on your skis?
I was back on my skis in a couple of days, but I went backcountry skiing, which is a lot more physically like active, because you're hiking up the mountain that you're going to ski down. So I did that probably 3 or 4 days after my diagnosis, after I was released from the hospital. And, I think I have to credit my ER doc. She told me, Maya, if there's one piece of advice I can give to you, it's try to keep doing all of the things you do. Get back to your normal life as quick as you can. And this adjustment will seem way less overwhelming in the grand scheme of things. So that's kind of what I did. I jumped back into it, had a ton of sugar with me at all times just to make sure, if I'm being super, super active, that insulin isn't dropping me too low. And it was hard. That was, of course, I'm like eating all of the snacks in my pack for the first couple of days. I'm like, okay, well, 10 packs of gummies wasn't enough. 20 be?
Yeah. You still had to figure, I mean, it was very recent, your diagnosis. You still had to find out how things worked, and you were just going straight out backcountry skiing, and that must have fast-tracked your diabetes learning in a way, no?
I think so. Yeah. It also fast-tracked some real emotional stressors and frustrations.
Okay.
Like you see low blood sugar is scary, and especially after your body hasn't had insulin in its system for a long time, that crash can feel really, really intense. And so, experiencing low blood sugar for the first couple times, that was like, holy crap, this is dying. This is what it feels like to be dying. Like, this is not good. And so that was it. It was definitely a really emotional roller coaster for the first 3 to 4 months, probably, because quickly after I was diagnosed, I jumped back on ski racing. I was out in Utah 2 weeks later for a ski race. Again, high blood sugar, low blood sugar, you've got adrenaline at play. Ski racing is something too where your performance window is about 60 to 90 seconds. That's how long it takes for one run of ski racing. And if your blood sugar is not perfect when you kick out of the start gate, there's not much you can do about it, right? Like your muscles fire slower. There's all of these kind of side effects of having blood sugar that's out of range for that high performance and small window of a sport. So that was really, really frustrating. And it was definitely a huge learning curve for me to figure out what was working and what wasn't, to try and prepare for that really small time frame.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that you'd lost a lot of muscle at that point because you went undiagnosed for a while. So that must have been hard to to start racing again, without the muscle, and it would have put your body under a lot of strain, I think, no?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I could tell. I mean, and I do think once I was put on insulin, I gained it back pretty quickly. Because I do ski so often, or I was skiing so often at the time. And so yeah, it was definitely hard, and my muscles felt more fatigued, but it was also an experience I had where like my senses came back to life after I was put on insulin. I imagine that I was actually undiagnosed diabetic for several months before, because like even in the hospital, I remember people hugging me and just being like, holy crap, my nerves, like I could feel things more. Like I hadn't realized that I had lost like sensation touch, like all of these super sensitive things had just kind of become more dull. And when I was put back on insulin therapy and my body kind of started coming back to itself and regaining muscle and regaining its senses, it was like I was alive again. It was pretty cool to experience that way. Silver linings, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but you're not the first athlete that tells me basically that they were diagnosed too late, because sometimes you're more tired probably, and you're more thirsty, but these symptoms can only also be related to overtraining sometimes, or to, a lot of physical exertion. It could be that, and you attribute it to that, and you say, okay, okay, I'm a bit tired, and maybe I overdid it a little bit, but that way, yeah, you miss the diagnosis at that point, and you don't go to the doctor until it's a bit too late, basically. And yeah, it's interesting to hear, because this is not the first time I've heard this, and yeah, it's a problem I wasn't aware of before, basically, but it's
Well, and I
something
think
that
it's
can really.
also likely a combination, like not only the fact that it really closely resembles overtraining, but it's also like you can look at it as like, oh, we are so hyperactive and we're so, we're very fit. We're able to, when you're first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, you're generally still producing some of your own insulin. It's hindered, but that lasts. You have that honeymoon phase when you're first diagnosed where you're still producing some. And so I think the increased amount of activity that us athletes are seeing on a daily basis also helps us use that insulin that we're still producing more efficiently. So I think that's also why a lot of athletes are diagnosed later than maybe a traditional person would have been, because, we're honeymooning and we're making use of that
Yes.
insulin by being super active.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a really good point you're making. Yes, it's also that, because your insulin sensitivity in general is just higher as an athlete, so it will just evolve more gradually in a way towards type 1 diabetes. And as you say in the beginning, you have still some insulin, so that just works harder if you're active. And but shortly then after your diagnosis, you suffered another injury, right? How
I
did
did.
that happen, and what happened then?
Yeah, I was at a ski race in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I was skiing slalom. And slalom is kind of short, snappy turns, like very quick pace. And I was literally just in the middle of the turn, felt my knee pop, immediately skied out of the course, and knew it right away that I blew my knee. And so, it's something that most people in the ski industry unfortunately experience. The ACL is like such a crucial ligament in your knee, but it's also something that bears a lot of force if you're not skiing with the proper technique, or if you get put a little bit, if your hips aren't forward enough, generally that puts more force on your knees. And so that can happen really easily in ski racing, and it's a very common injury. And yeah, so I had kind of just gotten back on my feet with diabetes and ski racing, and I was about a year into my diagnosis. It might not have even been a year, but that's when my ACL tear happened. And so at the time, I was also applying to colleges right before that ACL tear had happened. I was kind of in this, okay, well, I thought that I was going to become a World Cup skier, and then I had this diabetes diagnosis that shifted my perspective a little bit. And so maybe I'll apply to colleges and just see what I get. And so I did apply to colleges, but then I tore my ACL, and concurrently with this torn ACL, the diabetes diagnosis, both of those kind of shook me up enough to be like, okay, let's look into school. So that was kind of the official shift of me moving away from ski racing and into a college education. When I was first diagnosed with diabetes, I was also on a clinical trial. And that was testing the efficacy of chemotherapy to see if it would slow down the autoimmune attack. So see if it could preserve some of my beta cell function and allow me to still produce some insulin. And that in combination with the torn ACL and the diabetes diagnosis, it just all kind of shifted my perspective. And I was like, okay, I want to go to med school. So first step is undergrad. So
Yeah,
that was the big pivot for me.
quite a year, I would say. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a lot to take in 1 year.
it was quite a lot. Yeah.
And then you chose to study immunology at UC Berkeley. Did diving into the why and the how of the immune system help you accept maybe the why me part of the diagnosis?
Yeah, I never really got the why me part. I'm not personally religious, but I do kind of believe that things happen for a reason, and I believe that things are thrown at us, only things that we can handle. And so I guess I decided to study immunology because it was really fascinating. It was less so why me and more so why isn't my immune system working the way it should? And I thought that was really fascinating. And I always had been super interested in biology and in particular chemistry in high school. And so, yeah, we had a really cool program. I ended up going to UC Berkeley and studying immunology and infectious disease. And UC Berkeley for biology is like one of the best educations you can get for sure. I studied, my general biology professor was Jennifer Doudna, who, if you're at all a science nerd or have read some of the common literature recently, she discovered CRISPR and is kind of revolutionizing the future treatment of genetically encoded disease management. So super exciting, but yeah, had a great education at Berkeley and super thankful for that.
Yeah, and was it in any way because of your diabetes that you picked immunology, or was it just out of interest in immunology in general, or what did diabetes play a role in that?
Diabetes definitely played a role in that. I think I wouldn't have realized how amazingly complex the immune system is if I hadn't been diagnosed. Because when I was diagnosed, I immediately looked into kind of the what causes this kind of thing, and that's what revealed that it's your immune system malfunctioning. And I think that's another part of my intent, at least in the next couple years. I've got similar goals with you to show the world that we can still do everything as type 1 diabetics. It just takes extra planning. And no, it doesn't mean I ate something wrong. And no, I wasn't unhealthy or inactive and to cause this. All of the common misconceptions, I think that's one of my life's and my goals in life, to kind of change those misconceptions and help educate the world on it. Because before I was diagnosed, I didn't understand that myself. But yeah, so getting into it and studying like the deepest parts of the biology behind it was really interesting to me. I'm a bit of a nerd that way. So.
Yeah, you clearly have a scientific mind. Do you rely more on the hard data from your CGM, or have you developed a sort of pro athlete intuition where you can feel a spike or drop before technology tells you?
It's definitely both. I think, the technology that we have these days is really amazing. Even 10 years ago when I was diagnosed, it was totally different. And so I am on the Omnipod 5 closed loop system with the Dexcom. Currently, I'm using the G6 because it's definitely been more reliable, but they are going to stop making that. So I will have to transition to the Dexcom G7, which I have already used. It unfortunately doesn't connect to the Omnipod quite as well. I think the Bluetooth on the Dexcom device, the newer one, is just not quite as strong. But yeah, I love the closed loop system. It works really well. For me, I think the things that I am super hyper aware of, like I definitely still feel low blood sugars. I I start with like, the typical symptoms of getting sweaty, but when it's really going low, I can tell that my tongue is going numb. It gets like tingly. And that's my biggest telltale sign that it's like, okay, this is a serious low. But yeah, so I'm super aware of that, but I also definitely read into a lot of my history reports on my Omnipod and my Dexcom and see how I can change those. The biggest thing for me making the Omnipod 5 system work has been being more aggressive with manual corrections. So it will bring you down over time using the automated loop system, but it won't bring me down as much as I want it to, as quickly as I want it to. So if I'm high, I will usually override the suggested amount and give myself more.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I've been using Omnipod for over 5 years now. I think first a Dash, and then I tried the Omnipod 5, but actually changed back to Dash in the end. I started using a do-it-yourself loop system, so Android APS. And yeah, because of that, what you're saying basically, because it's not aggressive enough for me, and also the activity mode, I would say, if you're very, very active, for me at least, it wouldn't stop me from going hypo. So I needed more than that somehow. So with that, with the closed loop, I can set my target glucose to 180, for instance, and still adapt my basals on top of that. So that really helped me to, especially for very, very intense exercise or longer runs, but it's different for everybody. But that's something I also noticed. Like you say, the Omnipod is quite conservative, I would say, sometimes when it comes to corrections. I noticed that.
Yeah.
So you started using a pump straight away, or you were on injections first?
I was told that I have to use injections for 6 months before insurance will approve a pump. So I was on pens for 6 months with the Dexcom. And so I did that for 6 months. And then the minute that I could get on a pump, I initially had jumped straight to that. And I think my first pump was the Animus Vibe, I think it was called. And those were like ancient looking pager devices. It's so funny. It's cool to see how far the technology has come. But yeah, everyone would make fun of me for my little pager clips to my waistband.
But you were an early pumper then, because I personally, I didn't switch to a pump before there was a tubeless pump, because I could just never imagine myself wearing a tubed pump.
But that is one of the best things about Omnipod now is the tubeless factor for me, because like when you're buried, when your pump is buried underneath 10 layers when you're skiing in the freezing cold, it makes it so much nicer to not have the attached tubing and the amount of times you get tubing stuck on doorknobs and all these different things, right? Or like it falls out and just completely like, the pump would fall off my hip clip and then just pull the needle out of my stomach. It's like, oh, great.
Oh my.
So there's definitely some less glorious moments with the tube pumps for sure.
I was actually wondering about that. So I know that insulin is fragile. So I wonder, how do you keep your pump and your backup insulin from freezing when the temperatures drop well below zero?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think for the most part, I used the Frio cold case. And that's something where you just soak it in water, and it uses some evaporation technique with this gel system in it and keeps it from getting too hot, but it also keeps it from freezing. And then more recently, on like overnights where it's quite a bit colder outside and really risks freezing, then I will put it into a Hydro Flask vacuum insulated container, like just a water bottle. And as long as it's vacuum insulated, it won't freeze like it is outside. So that's been my backup in really cold scenarios.
A pro hack.
Yeah.
So, and you also, you mentioned it, you wear a lot of layers. Where do you find it is the most accessible place to wear CGM or pump site so that you don't have to strip down in the middle of a snowstorm to fix an issue?
Yeah, for me, I would put when I used a tubed pump, which I haven't in probably 5 years. But when I used a tube pump, I would put the insertion site on my stomach, and then I'd tuck it into my bra so that I could just go down my shirt and pull it out while I was on the chairlift or whatever, so that I could administer insulin or check my blood sugar there. So that was with a tubed pump. Now with the Omnipod, I put it wherever. My favorite places are definitely the back of my arm or kind of my upper back butt. Those are the two places where I think I have enough fat, so to say, where it absorbs well for me. Occasionally I'll put it on my stomach. I don't love putting it on there, but I think that I've used the back of my arms and my butt so much that I have some scar tissue and some absorption issues. So I need to start
Yes.
rotating a little more.
Yes, rotation is important. I really prefer the back of my arms, especially if you're sweating a lot. I find the stomach, it can get loose. It can, because I sweat quite a lot there, and I don't sweat a lot on my arms. So that's,
Yeah.
I found that that's the best place. But as you said, you need to rotate, and sometimes you get some scar tissue, and then you really need to move it. And I tried the back of I tried the lower back as well. But I find it hard. It hurts more to place it
Yeah.
there in general because there's not so much fat.
Totally.
Yeah, so that's
No,
something, an experience we
like,
share.
yeah, I have some friends who have tried some like really unique placements and they freak me out. But like when it was like on top of the forearm or like on top of your
Yeah.
thigh, and like as a skier or probably you too as a cycler, I have zero fat on my thighs. My thighs are like brick muscles.
Yes.
So I've tried to put pumps there and they just bleed immediately. It's no good. Yeah, I don't know. Limited options.
So talking again about skiing backcountry or alpine, did you have a specific strategy for diabetes management when you're skiing, or do you manage your diabetes as you go?
It's a little bit of both for sure. I think it really depends on the kind of skiing, right? If I'm skiing at a ski resort, it's not as much activity, and generally you're just working on the downhill, and likely high chance of adrenaline. So to me, that means I don't use activity mode when I'm skiing at a resort because I'm just riding chairlifts up and I'm just skiing down, and the adrenaline from skiing down will likely spike me if I were to be on activity mode. Now, if I'm in the backcountry, it really depends on where my blood sugar is starting. If I'm starting in range and I ate more than an hour ago, then I will generally just use my regular automated mode until I start to see myself trending low. And then I'll put on activity mode. That's if I'm like hiking up a mountain for an hour or two.
Yeah.
And for me, activity mode does actually seem to work. I know you had mentioned you still tend to go low. If I use activity mode and I don't have a ton of insulin on board, then it usually keeps me from going low. If I have insulin on from breakfast or whatever I just ate, then I likely will go low. So I'll have a snack before I start backcountry skiing and hiking up the mountain. But yeah, for the most part, I am kind of just monitoring and seeing where I am when I start. An ideal scenario for me would be if I'm going to hike for 2 hours before I ski down. I would like to have breakfast an hour before I go, and then I'd like to be at about 120 when I start. And then if that's the case, then I will just leave it on normal closed loop mode and just check it probably every 20 minutes. I do use an Apple Watch normally, so I can see it on my wrist rather than having to pull my phone out. So that definitely helps. But then there are days where I'm hiking for upwards of 10 hours if I'm doing a long traverse or something. So that is activity mode plus an entire backpack full of snacks and gummies, granola bars, honey. My glucagon, my inhalable glucagon comes everywhere with me. Yeah. And that's just like, no matter if I'm on activity, I could honestly probably rip my pump out for a day and be okay. Because I just, on those big longer days, I have to eat my way through the whole day. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I found it very interesting because you said that when you're skiing at a resort, you basically don't put on activity mode. Actually, I was thinking back because it's been a long time since I skied. But I do remember injecting insulin on the lifts because I would just, go back up because it takes so long. If you have to take a skill, especially if you have to wait in a line before you can enter. And then, so I do remember that I needed insulin there on
Yeah.
Because
Well, and I think like, especially when skiing's not something you do super often, you're going to get a higher effect from that adrenaline, right? You're going to get this huge surge of stress hormones being like, okay, this is a foreign environment. This is freaky. I'm going too fast. There are objects around me. So then your body goes into this like stress mode, and then it pumps out cortisol, which then makes your blood sugar a little bit more resistant to insulin, right? So then you have high blood sugar. So even without being on activity mode, you might still go high, but for me personally, because I do ski often and I do ski aggressive things and yeah, especially at the resort, I generally won't ever use activity mode. And in fact, I'll have to give myself corrections if I do more intense skiing with cliffs and chutes and things like that.
I can already hear it will be a lot of trial and error again
Yeah.
for me. So
I wish you
it
well.
will be, yes. So as a backcountry skier, there's a lot you need to focus on, like, even avalanche safety and navigation, survival. Does having to monitor your blood sugar feel like one more thing that keeps you safe, or is it an added burden for you?
I think it's kind of an added burden because you have to plan on being so prepared, right? Like we bring all of these different things. I have an avalanche beacon always on my body that's on in case I were to get buried. Somebody can find me via that signal. For people who don't know, an avalanche beacon is basically an antenna system that sends out a signal that somebody with another avalanche beacon can kind of locate you underneath the snow. So if an avalanche were to happen and bury me, another person with an avalanche beacon could hypothetically find me. So that's really important. And then I bring a shovel and a probe. And a probe is to try and find somebody underneath the snow. It's something that you kind of push into the snow and feel around to try and find somebody if they were fully buried. And then the shovel, obviously, to dig them out. So those are 3 safety pieces that have to come with me every time I go into the backcountry. It's really important you not only have these safety equipment pieces, but know how to use them in practice often, because the mountains are an entirely different beast, right? Like you can be as prepared as you want, but freak accidents happen. I've lost a lot of friends to avalanches, and it's just kind of an inherent risk of doing mountain sports and extreme sports. So that is super important. But there's this whole other side of things that a lot of people don't realize, where I'm wearing both a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump. And these insulin pumps and continuous glucose monitors, they have their own signals, right? And so this can cause signal interference with avalanche beacons, which is pretty intense, right? It's emitting another Bluetooth signal, which works on similar channels and can cause interference, causing somebody to not be able to find you quite as well. So there is that. There's been a lot of studies saying as long as you keep these devices far enough away from each other, there shouldn't be too much of a hassle. So I do try and keep them in separate pockets and further away. But there's, so there's that in the back of your head. And then there's the hypotheticals of, what if my pump malfunctions out here? Or what if my insulin freezes out here? Or what if I go too low and eat all my snacks and still can't come back up? Or, I mean, the endless hypotheticals that we as type 1 diabetics have to deal with, right? Like, not only am I trying to be the most prepared that I can be from an avalanche and mountain hazard risk, but I'm also trying to be the most prepared and careful with my blood sugar and diabetes management. And so it definitely complicates things. When I go backcountry skiing with partners, I generally like to help inform them and like educate them on, hey, here's where my glucagon is. I use the little Vasquimi nose spray. I've never had to use it, but that's what I carry with me. And so that's in case I were to go so low that I'd pass out or be kind of unresponsive, then they could help me there. But I do try and educate my partners so that they're aware of the situation and what to do in the case of an emergency. So yeah, I think there's like a ton of different factors. It adds a bit of a weight for sure. And
Yeah.
the biggest answer to that is to just always pack more supplies than you think you need. I think that's what has given me kind of a peace of mind out there, is like, okay, well, I only ate 3 packs of gummies today, but I had 25 packs of gummies in my backpack, like just make sure that you couldn't possibly end up in a scenario that is scary.
Just in case, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you need. But So it sounds like T1D didn't really make you more risk averse, but actually made you more calculated and confident in your preparation.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, luckily that's the way my brain works, and I am just a type A person. So, um, so I'm always trying to be prepared. And I grew up with the nickname Mommy Maya in high school because I would take care of all my friends aside of just taking care of myself. So, um, so I think, yeah, the answer is just be as prepared as you can because things are going to happen. You are going to see low blood sugar. You are going to see high blood sugar. You are going to see pumps fail. You are going to see CGM errors. You're going to see everything. You just gotta be
Yeah,
ready to do.
especially in a mild mountain environment. But yeah, actually, it's true for all people with type 1 diabetes. Just be prepared. It probably nothing's going to happen, but if something happens, well, you better have spares and you better have your insulin with you because otherwise you can get in real trouble.
Totally. Yeah.
So you wear your medical devices openly. Was there ever a time that you felt self-conscious about them, or have you always viewed them as performance enhancing tools?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'm glad you asked it because I think everybody should be proud of them. And I like to wear them openly as an opportunity to educate other people about what it is. People always ask, "Oh my gosh, is that a tobacco patch? Oh my gosh, like what is that?" And I think, it's really important that people learn about diabetes for multiple reasons. One being maybe we can catch more diagnosis before they needed to be a medical emergency. So I think the more awareness around it, the better. And so, yeah, I guess for me, I've never been super self-conscious about outwardly wearing them. I love to answer questions about it. I will say when I was on pens and even still, like if I go scuba diving or on a tropical trip, usually I go back to insulin pens because you can't wear pumps at depth. But when I'm on pens, I do find myself being like self-conscious to pull out a pen and inject in public. And I know I shouldn't. And I'm working on that with myself. But it is one of those like, do I really want to have this conversation with somebody right now? It's tough. You shouldn't have to deal with that.
Yes,
And
they
I
they
recognize,
they do
yeah,
have a different connotation usually, these pens, right? I mean, people can associate them with other things than diabetes.
totally. Yeah. And like with the rise of GLP-1s and like them becoming like a mainstream weight loss mechanism, a lot of people are like, oh, are you, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into that for sure.
Yeah,
But it is my strong belief that we should all wear things proud and do what we need to do because it's for our health. And I also recognize that it's kind of a mental hurdle at times. So to everyone out there, hang in there.
I agree.
Yeah,
But on Instagram, people see a fit athlete in beautiful mountains, but they don't see the 3 a.m. alarms or the anxiety of a failing pump. Do you ever feel a sense of loneliness in that invisible battle?
I don't, and I think it's because I've surrounded myself with a lot of diabetics. I got super involved with riding on insulin. It's a youth kids camp for to teach type 1 diabetics how to ski and snowboard. They also do surf camps. They did mountain bike camps at one point. So through that, most of the coaches are living with type 1 diabetes themselves, and it's one of those things where people are sharing about it and they have all these relatable experiences. So I'm in group chats for that. I ran the New York City Marathon this year with Beyond Type 1, another nonprofit. And there's another group chat for that. So I think between that and then some of the accounts that I follow on social media, I don't feel alone because I think more and more people are being open about it and posting more. And I'm trying to do that, although it's hard because I think most of my followers are just in it for the skiing content. So trying not to alienate too many people, but also trying to raise awareness with the small platform that I
Yeah,
do have. So yeah, I don't personally feel super lonely. I mean, there are definitely heavy days, there are days where your pump, like it's occluded or whatever, or like I put it into scar tissue and it's not absorbing well, or perhaps, I forgot to check before I went out the door and my pump expired while I was gone. And now I got to figure out how much time I have left before it becomes a
yes.
freaking alarm. So yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things to convey to people that don't live with it is the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, the amount of mental trials and tribulations that we go through on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. It's not like, oh, I did everything right yesterday and my blood sugar was beautiful, I'll do the same thing. It's not like that works, right? We all know that. Like, you can do the same thing 2 different days and have drastically different results. So it's, I, I like to explain it to people as a very reactionary disease. There's no getting ahead of it. It's just, guess and check, act and react. And that's definitely super frustrating. So I think, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, diabetes is tough. It's hard work, and yeah, many people would say there's a lot of negatives in diabetes. But do you think that type 1 diabetes also has maybe a positive side? Do you think it's made you in any way stronger as a person, maybe?
definitely. I think it's made me stronger as a person. It's given me, in a way, a purpose in life, to try and help educate and create a community for other people living with it. Um, and I always tell people, like, if I could take back my diagnosis, I don't think I would, because the amount of people I've met and the experiences I've had because of my diagnosis have changed my life so profoundly that I I would never wish diabetes upon anyone, but if you have to, it's a great family to be a part of.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. That speaks to the strength of the community, I would say. And I always say, if they had a cure for diabetes, I would want that cure, but maybe not as the first person. I can be, you can give it to me a little bit later. You can help, the newly diagnosed child first, or the old person that
Yeah.
has trouble managing their diabetes first. I don't have to be the first one to be cured.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. We've got our systems in place, It does work.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, you volunteer, for instance, with Riding on Insulin, a nonprofit that empowers children and teens living with type 1 diabetes. For instance, by organizing ski camps. How did you become part of the crew there?
Yeah, when I was diagnosed at 18, and I was still ski racing, I had kind of a distant friend who was involved with the organization, and they reached out to me and just said, "No rush, but if you ever want to get involved, we'd love to have you as a coach." And so I jumped in right away. I was like, "Oh yeah, sign me up. That sounds great. I'd love to be a part of it." Unfortunately tore my ACL that year, and so I couldn't be a ski coach, but I still went out on the bunny hill and just hiked around and took photos of the kids learning. So, but the people are amazing. Sean Busby and his wife Molly started it, and he's also a type 1 diabetic, and he's got a background of professional snowboarding as well. And Dustin runs the show alongside Sean and Molly, and they're just incredible people, really trying to create a platform both for kids to kind of learn some independence and be able to step away from their parents. I mean, it's like you were saying, the person not able to drop their kid off at the swimming pool, right? It's the same thing here, where you can't just send your kid off to ski camp, or you can't just send your kid off to soccer camp, because there needs to be constant medical oversight on somebody who's type 1 diabetic and not old enough to handle it themselves yet. So, Riding on Insulin provides that, and it's been really rewarding. I've gone to camps in Wisconsin, I've gone to camps in Alaska and Montana and Tahoe and Oregon, and so we host them all over the country. And it's a bunch of diabetics that come out, and we just make sure that we're being cognizant of each other's blood sugars and stopping when we need to stop for a snack break or take some extra insulin. And then at the same time, while the kids are out skiing with all the coaches, we have kind of a parents meeting where the parents can sit down and talk to other parents and share relatable experiences and just kind of foster a community among them so that they don't feel alone either. And yeah, it's just, the kids are so energetic and amazing. I remember this past year is really funny. I'm coaching them, and it was almost the end of the day. We had skied together all day, and I was like, well, I guess I should probably check my blood sugar too, huh? And the little kid looks up at me and goes, wait, you're diabetic too? His eyes just got huge. And I was like, yeah, didn't you know that? All of the coaches are diabetic. And he's like, that's so cool. And it's, like just being able to set the example and be like, okay, guys, we can do this. We got this. It means a lot to
Yeah.
me, and it means a lot to the kids who participate in camp too. So
Yeah, that must be really rewarding to see that, because that child looks up to you, obviously, and
yeah,
just realizes that, this is a great skier. She's just great at skiing. I can also be great at skiing because she has diabetes. I also have diabetes. So
yeah. And going back to that thing that you were saying too about, you know, people telling you, oh, you can't participate in sports because it's gonna mess with your blood sugar, or it's too much activity level is dangerous for a diabetic. It's like, no, that's not true. That's old news, and you just got to be prepared to react. So
yeah, yeah. So, but what is the most common fear that you see then in kids, or maybe the parents of kids with type 1 diabetes, and how do you help them overcome it?
um I think with parents, it's just the fact that they've never dropped their kid off at a camp before, right? They can't. They're like, a lot of these parents are helicopter parents because they have to be in order to monitor their blood sugars closely. So I think with the parents, it's really hard for them to watch their kids ski away with the coaches. But it's also, we've been doing riding on insulin for, I mean, they've been doing it for 20 years now or something. But, we've got systems in place. We've got it figured out. And it's going to be a great experience for the kids and the parents. So I think that's the biggest hesitation, is the parents watching the kids walk away. And then with the kids, I don't know that, like, a lot of them are too young to really have a lot of outward fears about it. I think a lot of them are just learning for the first time about like how to react to their blood sugar, because generally it's their parents checking and being like, okay, your blood sugar's low, you need to have a snack. Whereas, I'm checking in with the kids constantly while we're on the hill saying, how do you feel, rather than, okay, let's look at your number, so that they can try and associate a feeling with a number so that they're not fully dependent on these medical devices. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a really cool learning experience for the kids.
Yeah, and it's also great that you work with the parents, I think, because I was brought up in an environment where people were quite dramatic about diabetes. I mean, they were just like, oh, something tragic happened to you. It's a drama. It's terrible. If parents are fearful, if caregivers around you are fearful, you will take that as a truth, right? You will also be fearful of your diabetes. So I think it's
Yes.
very good to work with the parents too, to make them more courageous with diabetes and to give them more confidence in the diabetes management of their kid. So then the kid will also be fine with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, social media is helping right now, but I don't think there's a ton of good examples that are obvious outside of social media about diabetics succeeding and living a healthy life and living till they're old. And, and so when somebody is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, the first thing people Google is like, can I live a full life? Or like complications of diabetes. And then you see amputations and all this scary stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of scary things, and diabetes can be a very scary disease to live with. But I think, we're starting to see the world shift and build more of a narrative around what type 1 diabetes is, how it can be handled, and that you can, live a successful life. It's really interesting that the prevalence of diabetes is increasing so rapidly. It seems like there might be a bit of a connection to post COVID era diagnosis of autoimmune diseases. So I think, as we see that happen, we're also going to see more stories being shared. I know that there's a film in the works, including a couple of diabetic athletes. And I'm also working on my own small film project with Omnipod, which is really exciting.
Cool.
But yeah, I think like the more that we can share that, hey, we can live a fully successful life, you can live a normal life, it just takes some more planning. The more we can get that message out there, I think the better for everyone involved.
Yeah, because role models are so important. I mean, I talked to a lot of athletes, and many of them just had one person that believed in them, and that would just already had done what they wanted to do, and had also had type 1 diabetes, and they found courage and confidence in that. And it's so important to have that, because when I was diagnosed 27 years ago, there was no social media. There was no one I knew that had type 1 diabetes. There were no athletes I knew that had type 1 diabetes. The examples just weren't there. Now you see so many more people and especially athletes in all kinds of sports, in so many types of sports. So that's also why I started a podcast, to just, to collect these stories of top athletes and just show to the world, and to type 1s, of course, out there, that, everything is possible with type 1 diabetes. As you said, you just need to prepare right, and you need to, it's hard work, but everything is possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's awesome. I love that you're starting this podcast, and I hope we see more of this kind of stuff too going forward.
Yeah. So you're supporting a lot of kids and teens now, but if you could go back to that 18-year-old version of yourself in that hospital bed in Canada, knowing everything you've achieved since then, so the degrees, the backcountry lines, the lives you've influenced, what is the one sentence you then say to her?
I honestly, I kind of think that my ER doc nailed it on the head. Just keep living your
Yeah.
life the way you know how. Don't sacrifice anything. Get back to your normal lifestyle, because it'll seem like a minor adjustment in the grand scheme of things. And that was honestly the best advice I could have gotten at that time. And that's something I try to tell everyone that I hear of as newly diagnosed now, because it's true. I mean, you can't let a diagnosis like this completely alter your life in a bad way. Yeah, maybe it shakes it up, and for example, like me, makes me go to college and get an education and totally shift away from ski racing, and that has been an absolute silver lining. So I'm super happy to have had that experience. But yeah, I think that, and then the only other thing is, like, scream it from the rooftops. Tell anyone who will listen what type 1 diabetes is. Like, be obnoxious about it. Help educate other
Yeah.
people. Not only are you helping change the stigma of what it means to live with diabetes for other people, but you're also potentially helping catch a undiagnosed patient sooner before it becomes a real emergency or life-threatening. So there's so many reasons that everyone should be educated on these things. I mean, even just medical doctors, I think that it should be normalized. If somebody comes into the ER, their blood sugar should be ran. If they're doing a CBC, add it to the CBC. What's the hurt in a 10-second test that's going to tell you, if that is a factor to be considered. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Maia, it's been a real pleasure talking to you so far, and I feel I could continue talking to you for a while still, but I'd like to close our conversation on a lighter note, maybe by asking you a few quick fire questions, if you're okay with that.
it sounds great.
Okay, here goes. What's your favorite hypo snack on the mountain?
Welch's fruit snacks.
Outer days or perfectly groomed corduroy?
Oh, that's so hard because I come from e-racing. I would prefer powder days if I could have them, but it's been a rarity this season, and I've been enjoying a lot of groomers, so both.
High or low, which do you find harder to manage while skiing?
High blood sugar. It's just
And
like
why?
way more stubborn with like adrenaline in your system and all of these additional factors. I think like with low blood sugar, it comes back up quickly because I just have a snack. But with high blood sugar, it can be really stubborn to bring back down.
This one's for me because I'm in doubt still. So photochromic or polarized ski goggles?
I think I'm on the photochromic train, but polarized, I mean, yeah, you got to protect your eyes. So I don't think you can go wrong, but yeah.
I just put that in for myself because I was looking for goggles, and there's so many times, and it's like, okay, do I need this? Do I need this?
Totally, I know.
Yeah. What's the best place you've ever skied?
Oh man. It's a really hard question. I think the Alps is a pretty special place. I want to go back there. I had only skied there while I was still ski racing, and so I didn't get to explore much of the backcountry or side country there, and I would really like to do that. But I think between like the culture of skiing and little cafes on the hill, and yeah, I have big dreams about that. But other than that, I think Lake Tahoe, I live in Lake Tahoe. It's paradise. We have 300 days of sunshine per year. And, it's a perfect bluebird day, powder day after a storm so many times here. And that's why I'm here. So
CGM alarms, helpful guide or annoying roommate?
both for sure. I actually change my CGM alarms very frequently based on what I'm doing. So if I am on a longer backcountry ski, then I will increase my alarm. So it'll alarm me when my blood sugar is 80 instead of 70, just because I know if I'm dropping, I'm going to keep dropping while I'm being super active. So yeah, adjusting your alarms, you can make them tools. I also shut them up sometimes. Sometimes my high blood sugar alarm is like 250 because I can't bring it back down and I'm over it. So
If you weren't a skier, what sport would you do?
surfer for sure. I'm terrible at surfing, but everything about like the beach and tropical fruits and yeah, that's definitely, I don't know. Yeah, I like to rock climb too.
Yeah, anything outdoor.
Yeah, literally.
Pre-bolus, 15 minutes, or I'll do it when the food arrives?
I pre-bolus for very specific foods, one of them being bagels and one of them being yogurt bowls with granola. Those, for some reason, really destroy my blood sugar, no matter if I pre-bolus or not. So I try to pre-bolus, and I usually end up pre-bolusing for like 45 minutes rather than 15. Um, Other than that, literally, those are the two foods that I like consistently pre-bolus for. Other than that, I generally will do it like as I'm cooking dinner or if I'm eating out, then as the food arrives.
Yeah. Yeah,
How
that's
about
the
you?
same for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
the recovery snacks, I do pre-bolus for them. So especially when I'm training indoors and I'm on the turbo trainer, and then just like I know I'm gonna need like a big chocolate milk or something after that, and I know it's going to spike my sugar if I don't pre-bolus. So
Yeah.
I bolus when I'm still on the bike, and then I
Nice.
get off and I can drink it, and it won't impact my sugar that much then, because if you don't, you just spike like crazy.
Totally. I think like I'll do that after I come off activity mode, even without having food planned. If
Yeah,
I've been on activity mode for a while, there's just less insulin in my system, and then I spike when I stop doing that
true.
activity. So I will pre-bolus occasionally for that too, but that's about it.
Yeah, because it takes some time to refill your basal again after that,
Yep.
and especially if you've had a low basal for a while. I used to actually, when I was still on the dash, using I was I even put it on more insulin, so I would increase my basal, would put it on plus 100% for the last half hour just to refill my basal,
Smart.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
yeah,
Try that.
yeah, that was something that helped me. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, of course, and what kind of exercise you're doing, and it doesn't work for
Right.
everyone. But if you spike after activity, yeah, that's one of the ways to mitigate that, I would say.
Yeah. Smart.
Have you ever used your diabetes as an excuse?
Yes. I don't know as much as an excuse as it is taking advantage of the perks you get. Like for example, the National Parks Pass or pre-boarding on a Southwest flight when there's no assigned seating. So I've used those. Those are great perks.
Yeah,
As an excuse, yes, I have used it. I don't know, getting out of things I don't want to do, or when my friends want to be social and I'm like, I'm having a bad diabetes day, leave me alone. So, yeah, I use it, and I think we've earned the right because it's a struggle. So, use it lightly, but use it.
I agree. That's it. You did great. Uh,
Awesome.
how did you experience our conversation today?
That was great. Yeah. No, I think your questions were all super relevant, and I enjoyed it a lot.
If people would like to connect with you, where can they find you?
I am on social media, Instagram mostly. I'm trying to start a bit of a YouTube channel where I have some longer things, but editing takes time. So social media on Instagram, I am Maia _Bickert _T1D. or you can search by Maya the Diabetes. That is my nickname.
Good
And
one.
yeah, other than that, I'm always open to chat. So shoot me a message and happy to share what I've experienced or just be a relatable backdrop for somebody who needs to vent, because it is a hard disease to live with. But power to you. Keep charging on.
What's on the calendar for you for 2026 so far?
I've got a wedding coming up, so that's exciting, August 1st. And
Wow.
then
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, it's super exciting. I'm in the middle of planning a bunch right now, so that's been a lot, but that's okay. And then other than that, probably some ski trips. We're supposed to get a little bit more snow here in Tahoe. It's been a really dry winter so far, but we're supposed to get some more snow here in Tahoe, and then potentially do some filming for the diabetes movie I'm working on. So that's kind of in the works. And then other than that, I'm sure we'll be traveling. My fiance Eric and I love to travel all seasons. I've got some good climbing goals this year, so probably some time in Yosemite and other places, but just in general, enjoying the outdoors.
Honestly, Maya, I've learned so much today. Seeing how you've navigated the physical and mental peaks of your career while managing type 1 is incredibly empowering. And you're a living proof that adventure is accessible to everyone in our community. And I'm actually more excited than ever for my own ski trip now. So speaking about which, one last thing. What's the one thing I absolutely shouldn't forget in my bag?
Absolutely shouldn't forget. I always travel with pens in addition to pumps, just in case pumps fail, and it's easier to just take a shot of insulin really quick. So if you have access to pens as well, that's definitely helpful. And then on the ski hill, unrelated to diabetes, bring yourself like some chocolate or something nice, because that's what got me into it and it's what keeps you going for an extra run. So
Great. I'll make sure I take that. Belgium, the country I live in, is very well known for its excellent chocolate. So Belgian chocolates. So I will take some of that.
thanks, that's great.
So yeah, and on top of that, I've got a whole new list of pro hacks and tips to try out now. So I'm excited about that too. So yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you, Maya, for your time, your honesty, and really for everything that you do for the T1D community.
Yeah, right back at you. Thanks for having a podcast where we all can share our trials and tribulations and create a relatable space for others, because I think that's one of the biggest things that our community is missing right now. So
Yeah.
good luck on
Thank
your
you.
ski trip. Have so much fun. And yeah, I look forward to chatting more eventually.
Thank you, Maya. Thanks for listening to Out of Range, a podcast that shares real stories from athletes living and thriving with type 1 diabetes. I hope today's conversation inspired you to get active, take control, and find your own balance in sport and in life. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and follow the show, or share it with someone who might benefit from hearing these stories. Every recommendation helps more people with type 1 diabetes discover the power of movement. And in the meanwhile, keep learning, keep moving, and keep your glucose in range.